Thanks, Jack. So yeah, it's been really good to see kind of the pipeline that we've got coming through. Now, at some point in the next year, we're going to have to sell those units. So how are we going to do that? And I'm going to talk through some of the key things that I've learned in the past. One, sort of working for the Berkeley Group, working on some of my own projects, and now working within EXP and trying to sell some of the units that we're going to be bringing to the market. So we're going to be looking at a few things today. Branding and how that can help sell, when to start selling, if at what point during the design and build process do you actually get them on the market, whether that be off plan. We're going to be looking at how to tell the story of the project, and it's important to think about that as early as possible, even before starting the design of the scheme. How site holding can help you sell, how to stage the properties to make them stand out from the rest, working with agents, negotiating the sale once the offers do start flooding in, how to navigate the dangerous world of conveyancing with delays and keeping on top of your solicitors, which is a key point, and then also after sales. So I'm going to talk you through a couple of things that I've worked on in the past and some of the surprising things that I found out whilst working for the Berkeley Group. So this is the scheme that I used to work on. It's in Battersea. You can see Battersea Power Station in the background. And you'd look at this site thinking, well, it's a massive civil engineering project. It's a huge infrastructure project. We're not going to be creating any units to sell for a good 2 years. This was the full site basement that we were digging. And we wouldn't have been on site with sort of sales of units finished for 2 years after this. So why are we talking about sales and marketing? Well, even at this stage, we pretty much designed the full scheme. We designed all of the marketing brochures. We designed all of the CGIs. We designed the models. And we were already selling at this point over in Hong Kong and overseas. And it just sort of goes to show with these sizes of projects how quickly and how soon you have to think about selling off plan. And we'll talk through some methods that we use to do that in a bit later. So this was a large scheme. It was 955 apartments. It was a 8-year program, 10 to 26 stories in height, arranged over 12 blocks in Battersea and Nine Elms. And we were at the point of designing this where we hadn't even finished designing the layouts before we were producing the marketing material to sell overseas. And I'm not joking with that. We were genuinely trying to decide which was the best angle to choose for the CGI that didn't show some of the stuff we hadn't designed yet. That's how soon we were trying to get it to market. So the things that the Berkeley Group did extremely well and continue to do extremely well, and it touches on that branding experience. Everything for them was about the customer journey. It was about the service that the company provides, and that is really kind of where the forgetting the individual developments, the individual units that people are selling. They were selling that service, the brand that they had built, because of the customer journey that they created on each site, way before those units were created. Now, the ceiling prices that the Berkeley Group achieve on their sales is so much greater than Barratt, your Taylor Wimpey's, because they've built this brand and reputation for customer journey, service and quality. And that's, yes, it might have taken 30 years, but there's no reason why you can't start on your own developments thinking about these types of things. To bring them through, if you're like us and looking to grow as a developer, in 10 years' time, these are the sorts of things that we want to be known as, and that starts with day one, development number one, with customer journey and service at the forefront of everything we do. Now, this is something that I actually had at the end of the presentation, and very, very last minute brought it forward, because actually it's at the very inception of the scheme that you need to be thinking about these things. So even when you're discussing things with your architect, you've got your interior designers on board, what, given the situation and the location of your development, could be or might become barriers to those sales. If you're doing a phased development like we were doing, we've got the 8 blocks, the 12 blocks on site, and obviously we can only bring forward a couple of those blocks at any one time. How do you then phase off the rest of the construction site so that it doesn't interact and interfere with the way that you're selling the finished units at the front end of the scheme. So that's a real big consideration for some of the larger sites that you'd work on. Alternatively, traffic noise. Are you located near a busy railway line where that's clearly a barrier to sale? So what can you do about it? You can put double glazing, secondary glazing in to stop the acoustics. You can have acoustic ventilation so that you're not having to have openings within the walls with mechanical ventilation and things like that. And all these things need to be considered very, very early on. This bottom picture here is actually something that's, for smaller projects, we've got there's basically a shower room in the second bedroom. And after viewings on this particular unit, most of the people viewing this didn't like that space because it didn't have a toilet. So for us, it's about taking on board those comments, listening to the agents and getting feedback from what people liked, which is obviously great if they're going to put forward an offer, but actually the things that they don't like are even more important to decide, what is becoming a barrier to sale. If you're building big blocks where you've got housing association integrated with affordable housing on the site, then the way that you locate those within the blocks or on the site can be quite a big consideration for people when they're buying. So if you've got on the market open sales, the location and the proximity of those HA units is often quite a key consideration. So trying to move them in a location that doesn't affect the open market values too much. So one of the biggest things that you'll see people posting about and using for their sales materials are CGIs. So that's computer generated images. So similar to this, some people might take a double look at this and think, is this actually CGI or is it real life? They're pretty much photorealistic. And all of these things will set you apart from others when you're trying to sell off plan, which if you've got a number of units, you're going to want to think about doing, so that you can pique interest and raise awareness of your developments and give people the insight into what it will look like when it's finished. Most people can't visualize what spaces are going to look like before they're done. So with CGIs, especially interiors like this, you're going to be able to present the internal spaces to people in a way that they can envisage living there. So CGIs are so important, and you can get things like this created for £200-300 per image. And for me, it's well worth paying for, so that you're getting in people's faces and showing what people could buy as early as possible. The other key things to introduce to your schemes are brochures. You see them all the time, but for me, they've changed over the last couple of years. It used to be all about specification. What level of specification you're putting in for your kitchens, whether you've got stone worktops, laminate worktops. Yes, that's all important, but it's actually the bottom thing on the list that I've got here, because these things, I believe, are more important than the specification of the units themselves. So you want to be creating an emotional response. It's becoming more important for people to understand the buoyancy of the area, the places they can eat, the places they can shop, the pubs and restaurants that they can use, especially in central London where we are. People buy for locations more so than the units themselves. So understanding what local amenities there are is extremely important. Together with the transport connections, how quick is it into Oxford Circus? I mean, nowadays with COVID, things have changed slightly. People are moving slightly further afield. But it's really important to start selling this emotional response, selling this story, and helping people to envisage living their lives in your development. Obviously, if you've got family-sized units, people are going to want to think about schools and education, so putting that in your brochures is really important. And as I said, specification for me is on the bottom of this list. They're not going to pick up that brochure unless they feel like they can see themselves living in the units. So essentially, you want to be creating a sense of place. As a developer, we talk about units, we talk about number of apartments, but it's all about creating that sense of place that people want to live, and that is what's going to sell your units faster. if you're lucky enough to have a big enough scheme where you've got sale suites, and even if you've got, if you're just dressing properties, which we'll get onto later, it's important that people don't just use their eyes and that one sense, going into a unit. It's not all about just what people see. To make people feel welcome, to engage with them, with the surroundings, you can add things like smelly sticks in toilets. So it may seem very, very small, but actually different people see things and react to things in different ways. So the different smells that you can create in the property, the textures that you create with different wall coverings, the interiors and colors that you bring to life, and how that affects people. There's a lot of talk about oh God, I can't remember the name. Help me out here. The philanthropic? No. What's William Stokes put in his biophilic? About that sense of warmth, the green freshness of plants and things like that are also important. Warmth of an underfloor heating that people feel on their feet. All of those things, it's not just what people see, it's how they feel within that space. So don't just think about what people see. Nowadays, technology is fantastic. There are so many things out there that can help you sell faster, and especially when there's so much overseas investment coming into the UK at the moment. These types of Matterport 360 tours and virtual reality settings are a great way of showing armchair investors, overseas investors around your finished products. And this will cost you probably £150 to create. It's up on the internet for anyone to see. And especially, I know during COVID, these things went off the chain because people obviously couldn't get out to view things. So people were utilising Matterport and 360 tours a hell of a lot more.
On the, just to interject there, we obviously run a HMO business too. So houses of multiple occupancy where people living in shared accommodation. We bought a property in February this year to do a conversion works, and the conversion works were complete on the week that lockdown was released. So we had to fill a property, which was a 5-bed HMO, with people that were going to share during lockdown. And we filled it within 3 days from a Matterport release to 5 tenants. So just goes to show, before we had never let a room really, before anyone had seen it. And we wouldn't have done anyway, because we wouldn't have guaranteed that they were taking the space. But during that time, we prided ourselves of disinfecting the rooms for their move-in, and we staggered the days that they could move in so families could help. But the Matterport was the key element to actually filling that property. So the 250 quid, I think it was, that we spent saved us that in the rental time that it filled it by tenfold.
Yeah, the beauty is you then got that forever as well. That 360 video, when one tenant leaves, you can just send this Matterport camera around, upload it to Rightmove for people to view remotely and make their decision there and then. It's only just going to speed things up even quicker. So that's a really great tool for people to use, and it is, you can get different packages where people can create you the floor plan for your property, create a 360 tour and photos for £250–300, which for me is money well spent. Other little tricks about things to think about. I know that I've spoken to plenty of developers that have finished their units and they look like this. They look bare. They put them on the market. They've had people come around to view them, but to no success. No offers. And the main reason for me in this situation is that people can't see themselves living in these barren open spaces. So very cheaply, and what's available to most people nowadays out there is virtual staging. So this is the same photo. It's just been staged using Photoshop, which seems extremely simple, but I mean, the difference is dramatic. It looks more welcoming. It looks more homely. They put some fire in the fire on the wall. This is, people can see how they can live in this space. And this sort of thing can be done extremely cheaply. I'm talking 60, 70 pounds per image, which is a great way of just enticing people to view. And if they can't view, they can at least visualize themselves living in the space. Something that is often overlooked, and again, costs 150, 200 pounds, is taking professional photos. I mean, this one on the left is the same room, but it's taken with my crappy phone camera, with a toilet pot, and it's just not staged. The lighting is awful, and it just doesn't look welcoming at all, or as welcoming as a toilet can be. So yeah, take professional photos. They'll understand how to utilize the best lights, the best cameras, the best flash, and really sell your development in as best as it can be. So it's not all about what you can do as the developer, but also capitalizing on some of the other things out there available to you. So the other incentives right now is the Help to Buy, which has been massive over the past couple of years. The current Help to Buy scheme ends March 21, but there is a new scheme that's spanning from, I think, 21 to 23. Is it, Saul? That's right, isn't it? The new scheme, yeah, 2021 to 2023. So when the existing scheme ends, there's a new one that comes on board, which is slightly different. At the moment, people can take advantage of the SDLT changes. So we've really pushed heavy on one of the schemes that we're doing at the moment, a joint venture, which is a 5-bed house that we're converting into 2 3-beds. And we needed to start at the beginning of October because timelines basically were that we needed to finish by Christmas. We needed to take advantage of the big influx of Rightmove and Zoopla visits that happen on Boxing Day every year, to try and get our product on the market for that time, and allow 3 months for the legal process to take place once we've had offers and have sold those 2 units before the end of March, which is when the SDLT changes end. So looking ahead and understanding how these government incentives work can really play to your advantage. One of the other incentives that we do and have done on that Seafield Court, the crowdfunded project that Jack spoke about earlier, the basement project, is actually we staged one of our properties, which I'll get into in a bit. But the beauty of doing that is that it gave us some extra leverage to negotiate with the buyers, in that we knew that we had selling that furniture to them as a backup if we needed to negotiate or raise our offer higher, or it was just another string to our bow. Site hoarding. So this is the first thing. This is the first hoarding that we've done, and it's already really paying dividends. So not only does it create a safe site, which is very important for the workers on site and the people still occupying those spaces, or this site in particular, but it piques interest and awareness for the locals. This is quite a busy road, so people are driving past this every day. It's almost free advertising. Yes, it costs some money to put it up, but actually it's going to be there for the next year, and I guarantee the inquiries that we get from that hoarding will pay for itself many times over. We've already raised the inquiry levels on site from office tenants. We've got a barber that's looking to move in at the rear, which saw this sign and got in touch. We've had interest already, and we haven't even for the residential units. We haven't even started on site building them yet. But people have inquired, saying when they're going to be ready, can you send me some floor plans? Can you send me an indication of costs? So site hoarding for us now is one of the key priorities. As soon as we've got a site under ownership, we will be looking to install site hoarding to promote what we're going to be developing on site. And I thought, before moving on, we'll talk a little bit about how much this costs, because for those that haven't done this before, I didn't know before doing these ones really how much they cost, and we've got prices for other ones since then, and you're looking at about 75 to 100 pounds per linear meter of sort of construction framework behind. So that's the stanchions, the sort of plywood backing, for someone to come and put the graphics that you've designed or they've designed on for you, which is about 150 to 175 pounds per linear meter. So we had about 13 meters length of hoarding here. So the total cost installed was just over £3,000 plus VAT. So like I say, we are very confident that we'll get that money back many times over with how much visibility this hoarding is giving us on the street.
Nice one. So as Ben alluded to, I don't think anybody wants to sell their property slowly. I mean, there might be a few circumstances, but particularly if you've got finance on your development, you certainly want to shift it as quick as possible. And irrespective of how many incentives you have or what the finish of the property is like, it's going to be difficult to sell if you have a rubbish agent. And every week, Jack and I see stuff where images are upside down, or the information is misrepresented. So, you know, something would be categorized as a house when it's actually a flat, or vice versa, you know, particularly if it's a house and you're listing it as a flat, you're mis-selling yourself. And so, yeah, you just want to make sure that you're choosing the right agent. So on the next slide, we sort of talk about key considerations in working with the correct agents and finding the correct agents. So, for example, if you take our Seafield project, I mean, we had a lot of agents to choose from in Reading, and we went with a team which had strong presence in the area. And it's sort of, it sounds obvious when you talk about it, but it's very easy to make the wrong decisions. You want an agent that's going to work hard for you. So even if you go for an agent that's got a strong presence in the area, it doesn't mean they're going to work the best for you. So it's a case-by-case basis. And what I mean by that is, one of the larger agents, they might have just been instructed to sell a new Berkeley Homes block of flats. So their new homes team is completely stretched and focused on selling those rather than R2 units. So, you know, there's an element that you sort of need to drill into the detail. And then not just picking the right agent, you've got to make a decision on whether or not you're going to go with one or multiple agents. And that's a decision that's sort of based on whether or not, you know, you're rushed to sell, because going on with several agents can give an impression that you're under pressure or you need to sell quickly. And also you're going to be paying more in commission if you're with several agents. There's usually an incentive when you're on a sole agency basis, and the commission structure for that should be around 1 or 2%. If you're getting less than 1%, you tend to be doing well, depending on the area again. So once you've instructed an agent, it's pretty key to make sure that you've set clear expectations with them, because time can slip away really quickly, especially if you've got those other projects going on. So agreeing those timelines with the agent to make sure that you know, they've got targets to work towards, and that means that you can sort of hold them accountable or at least have catch-ups if those targets are missed. Another thing that we've got listed there is keep them up to date and vice versa. So, for example, on that Seafield project that we had, there was a few additions that we did sort of later on, such as adding a car park space to one of the flats. And it's important to make sure that all the sales agents are updated rather than just the senior negotiator. It's important that everybody that's doing the viewings is informed so that they can inform the prospective buyers. It's important also to just have regular touch points with them, because getting the feedback from the agents, as Ben suggested, is really vital so that you can take that feedback on and act on it. And there was feedback that we were getting that we were able to act on, that sort of helped in the process. Everybody that's doing the viewings is Jack, mute yourself. Informed the prospective buyer. Nice one. And we try. It depends on the scale of your business, but if you're not getting, you know, tens of viewings every day, in our case, we were getting one a day or one every 2 days. In that instance, it's quite good to have the agent just call us and give us how it went whilst it's fresh in their mind, so that we can sort of be up to speed and act accordingly, and just make sure that they're obviously providing us with a progress report as things go on, so that you've got a paper trail of it as well. and ultimately, you know, if they're not performing and you've got that record, then you shouldn't feel like you have to be committed to that one agent. You either go with a different agent or go on a multi-agent basis. So it's important to make sure that they're performing in the way that you would expect. And then in terms of negotiating the sale, obviously once the agents have achieved an offer that's either acceptable or not, you know, you've got to go through that negotiation. And in most instances, you know, a good agent should be working for the vendor, the seller. Obviously, if you're a buyer and you find a good agent, they should be helping you out. But in the instance where you're selling, they should be looking after your best interests, and that is obviously getting the best price for you. Obviously, you know, working with the agent at the point of marketing is when you should be having that price set appropriately. And if price is an issue with one of the buyers, and you can see that there might be a way that you can push their price up. You know, if they're trying to negotiate 5 or 10 grand off, but you want the cash, as Ben said, we could use the furniture in the staged flat as a negotiation tactic. So sweeteners like that can help. And Jack, what was the save best for last? So in terms of the listing, if you've got more than one flat or house, you obviously want to try and get rid of the stock which is less desirable first, and save the best till last. And in that way, obviously, you're not going to be left with the worst or most difficult to sell. And so, yeah, in terms of those sweeteners and getting the best price, it's important to find out what the buyer's circumstances are. You know, they might be time sensitive, but not price sensitive. And so you can complete quicker and get a better price for it. One trick that we used or tactic that we used for achieving better prices on our Seafield site was, for the first sale, we paid for the stamp duty, which meant that we could have a higher sale price, which helped the subsequent sale of the other flat. Just as a comparable basis, it helps in that regard. And obviously, you know, be prepared to walk away if you get an offer from someone that's a lowball, and you've got finance on the development and there's pressure. You've got other people sort of expecting you to sell. If it's not the right price, you've put time and effort in to get to that stage. You want to make sure you're getting the right price. So yeah, there's an opportunity cost there and a balance, which you know, that should be in your spreadsheet as to what that number is going to be. And then obviously make sure once you've agreed on a price, timeframes are also key, because there's no point in getting the right price if they're not going to give you those funds for 12 months, because that would have a serious impact. We'd obviously much rather achieve a sale within a month or two and have a slightly less a lower offer than have a slightly higher offer and it take 12 months.
Yeah, on that point, with Seafield, for example, one of the properties had 2 offers. One was from a cash buyer from an elderly lady that the agent said they weren't too sure on them. And yes, they were higher than the other offer, but for us, it was less risk to go with the lower offer, who was a first-time buyer. They'd had their mortgage in place, than a lady that had been into the agency, offered on numerous flats, refused to put any reservation fees down, and the agent, you know, just sort of openly to us said that he wasn't convinced by her over the other party, even though she was willing to pay more. So it's about choosing the right buyer that's most likely to complete, rather than just the most potentially profitable buyer.
Nice. And then obviously once you've agreed, then it goes into the conveyancing. And obviously, if you are going through a development, you want to sort of make sure things are lined up ahead of time. So your solicitor, you can instruct before you even go to market, and you can sort of get that legal pack ready so that when the offer comes through, that legal pack can go to the buyer's solicitor straight away. Make sure that the solicitor that you have instructed has the capacity, because we've faced experiences in the past where, you know, we're waiting on solicitors even on our end, and we're having to chase, and it's clear that, you know, they've got a lot on their plate. So having one that is very capable but also has the time to spend on your files is important. And then in terms of the process, we've got a table on the right, which is actually really good for outlining the conveyancing process and the steps involved. I won't go through them one by one because you've got them listed there, but it's a really good sort of checklist to have as a reference for keeping track and knowing what's coming up. And then just make sure that during the conveyancing process, all parties are CC'd. So obviously, if you're in a joint venture, you want to make sure that everybody's aware, so decision makers are in the loop, rather than, you can lose several days, and therefore, you know, that's costing you money if people aren't involved. And if there is a decision that needs to be made and people aren't seed in, it goes without saying, just arrange a call and get people on to make that decision. And Jack, do you want to speak about the last two?
Yeah, so making the solicitor's job and bank easy, fundamentally, for a transaction to go through, a solicitor is reviewing a lot of paperwork, more probably than the buyer or the seller ever did, of an asset they've never seen or walked around. So try and make their job easy. Do descriptive diagrams, do arrows, share documents, share walkthroughs, spend a call on a Zoom call with them. Because what you have to remember is you've got to convince them to understand it just as much as you do. So we always try and make the process as easy for our solicitors and banks as possible. If they're asking questions, understand the root of the question and be explorative of how you answer that question. Because the issue is, if you don't, then it's just going to slow things down. You can't expect them to push the process forward because they're getting paid regardless. You've got to expect them to understand what you're saying so the process can go forward. And then finally, last point was the price is typically for conveyancing between 1,000 and 2,000, depending on the size of the asset. So, any questions? Nick's been on the chat box asking me a few questions as we've been going through, but I've pretty much answered them all, I think. On here, I don't know if we've got any on Facebook.
I haven't seen any. Is there anything you think we should touch on a little bit more, or anything that I rushed through, or?
No, I think the most key thing is, you know, we're all only a message away. I wouldn't hold our hands up and say we're the best sellers in the UK of property, but we have people that can help us influence that. But also, if anyone's got a specific issue or question, just send us a message. It doesn't have to end after this call, so we're only a message away. But fundamentally, I think it outlines from the outset where Ben said that we like to add value at every stage of the process. There's a lot you can be thinking about in marketing and sales. And for some property sales, it could be too much work to do everything that we've discussed. And for others, you may be doing too little. So it's obviously pretty bespoke for what you're doing, but I think we covered it off pretty well.
Yeah, I think the key message is probably that too many people see the sales and marketing as an activity to do after the units are completed, whereas there's so much that can be done up to that point to build awareness, to build interest, and to help the units sell a lot faster when they are completed.
Yeah, so Nick's asked a question. Do you sell online using landing pages and using Facebook or AdWords?
We have tested that, and we tested it with our Hyde End Road project. So the office to the rear of this space. We have had some LinkedIn adverts running for the last, we tested it for a month to see how it goes. How is it? just to test to see really. It's not something we've done anything of before. Way back is it? Yeah, this one. So this office unit. So we have for a month we had some pay-per-click advertising on LinkedIn to try and see how that goes, rather than relying on agents, actually bringing it in-house. And I've noticed that this type of marketing is being used a lot more. I get a lot of Instagram and Facebook ads pushed my way from the likes of the Berkeley Group. I keep seeing the film works in Ealing pop up because they're obviously targeting me. I sort of live in that area, and I think a lot of big players will be looking more at the direct pay-per-click marketing. I think if any businesses have grown over the last 6 months during lockdown, it's been marketing agencies, especially online, where people are pushing more towards that because they realize the benefit of it, and utilizing all of the technology that we've outlined, like the virtual staging and the 360-degree video tours. All of that stuff can be viewed on your tablet, on your phone, on your desktop. So I think it's going to become more and more important. It didn't really work too well for us. Like I say, it was a test, and it was me testing it rather than an actual agency. So that therein lies the problem, probably. But it was a useful process to go through to see what kind of interaction we did get. And we'll certainly be looking at it more going forward, definitely.
Good question. I hope that's answered it, Nick. We've just had Phil Council join us, who normally has a few good questions. So I'll let Phil get behind his desk and maybe get some questions ready for us. I know he's joined us fairly late. Phil, sorry, we've pretty much ran through everything thus far, but open to any questions on selling, and obviously you know a bit about our business, so if you've got any other questions outside of that, do let us know. Good, I think we've pretty much covered off it all. So a bit about where we're at in terms of our webinars and EXP. What are we doing? Are we disappearing off the face of the earth? As you've seen, this is the last of our series of webinars, which is basically running through all stages of property development. We will be doing a lot more webinars early part of next year. We'll probably be doing more bespoke specific areas, whether that's dressing, whether that's ground makeup, whether that's specific on acquisitions, whether it's funding structure, whether it's what finance we use. We're going to be covering off all of these in the new year. So do follow us. Aside to that, we're going to be adding on to our YouTube channel much more videos between now and then. So make sure you follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And by all means, at any point in the next or near future, send us all a message if you have any questions. But anything in particular, we're happy to answer. We've got a lot more content coming. As you've seen, we've got 11 projects that we've taken on this year. So that's 2020. And I believe it was about 7 to 8 in 2019. So we're extremely active. We love to have a following because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of particular changes and tweaks where we found an issue and we've resolved it that we'd love to share. So keep following the journey.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks everyone, and yeah, catch up soon.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.